This is Come and See with Father Philip Hall, turning to and following Christ in the 21st century. Father Philip is parish priest at All Saints of Lincolnshire Orthodox Church in Lincoln, England.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Christ is risen. Begin by reading Acts 16:16 to 34 and John chapter 9, 1 to 38, and concentrate on the last few verses of each of those readings. There's a lot to do with darkness within them, isn't there? You have the darkness of the man who's born blind. You have the darkness of the people in the jail because it's night time when they're in there. You have the darkness of disbelief, the darkness of idolatry, the darkness of injustice, the darkness of people refusing to see good where good is. And in our society at the moment, we have the darkness of a tiny virus that hardly anybody can see. Indeed, you need special equipment in order to be able to detect it at all. There's the darkness of the lockdown, the darkness of our hospitals being filled with people who are ill, the darkness of elderly people being imprisoned in their homes, the darkness of very elderly people living in care homes who are threatened by this awful virus, the darkness of the suffering from the situation of completely different things within our shops, the darkness of going on a journey and only being able to go so far, the darkness of not being able to go on holiday, the darkness of not being able to shop properly, the darkness of all these other things that we've got used to, just simply not happening. And even that strange darkness of not being able to see people's faces properly because their faces are covered with a mask. The darkness of not being able to shake hands or hug or kiss. The darkness, which is that feeling of despair as people have when they see that their job is going to come to an end. The darkness of realizing their career was before the virus and probably won't be there afterwards. And in these readings, we have darkness as well. The darkness, first of all, of the man born blind. But his darkness comes to a dramatic and sudden end when the Lord spots him. There were lots of blind people around at that time. He was born blind, but here's the one that the Lord made the paste and put on his eyes, and he could then see. And with this new light, he then goes out and he talks to the others who are much more blind than he has ever been, particularly to the Pharisees, who look to see what he has happened, and all they can see is that this healing was evil. The person who did it must have been a sinner. They reject it entirely, this light that comes down into the darkness. They reject completely. And the Lord himself says, I am the light. And that light was imparted to the man, but it was imparted everywhere. But some people could not see it. And in the end, because he's bearing witness to the gospel, and because those other people see the gospel as being evil, they reject the gospel, they reject Christ, and they reject the man who was formerly blind, and they throw him out. You see now how this begins to fit in with the other reading in Acts 16. Paul and Silas have been beaten severely. They've had their clothes ripped off them and they've been thrown into prison, and it's now night time, and it would have been dark in there. They wouldn't have wasted any money on candles or lamps for the prisoners. You would think that Paul and Silas would be licking their wounds and feeling pretty disgruntled. Instead of which, to our surprise, and really is to our surprise, they are praying and they are singing hymns. They are joyful. They are bringing the gospel to mind, and they're bringing the gospel to that place where they are imprisoned. And the Lord acts like he did before with the other man. The Lord acts, and he acts dramatically. In the first case, he builds him new eyes. In this case, he rattles the prison and shakes them free from the shackles. And the prison officer, the jailer, comes in with light, how appropriate, expecting to find that all his prisoners have run away, but they're still there. And Paul and Silas, instead of complaining at him for their illegal and wrongful imprisonment, actually comfort him, strengthen him, and tell him the gospel as well. So the gospel, in the middle of this darkness, actually had an ability to shine out like light to the prisoners, to the prison jailer, and to his family. And like in the gospel reading, the leaders of Philippi are not impressed. They beg the apostles to forgive them, but they also reject the apostles. They decide that this good news is bad news as far as they are concerned. And they plead with the apostles to leave them. They say, leave this place. Go away, we don't want your good news. Now, here we are also. We're in a dark place. Our whole nation is in a dark place. Large swathes of the world are in a dark place. And how do we need to react? Well, into that dark place, either the Lord will come, or we need to bring him. If he comes, he comes. But we can bring him through prayer, through worship, through praise, through our joy, through our faith, through our love, through our constancy. And that way, actually, the Lord comes into the situation, into this darkness in which we are living at the moment. And that way, we can also impart the gospel to show through our prayers, our worship, our joy, our gospel-centeredness, that actually Christ is risen, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. For like then, he is still the light of the world. Like then, there's still a lot of darkness around. Like then, we also need that light to be shed abroad. And now, in place of Paul and Silas, we are the ones who have our feet in shackles. We are the ones who need to pray and sing hymns. We are the ones who need to prevent other people from harming themselves and bring to them the light and the joy and the peace and the truth of the gospel. And that gospel is Christ Jesus, risen from the dead, shedding his light upon all of humanity. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Christ is risen. Your prayers, God bless you. Amen.
Join us again next time for Come and See with Father Philip Hall, a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.